option as far as Loyolites are concerned. But I must say, with all the humility at my command, that civil servants who are from Loyola, both serving and retired, have always brought to bear on their professions the, the typical Loyola qualities of excellence, simplicity, and compassion, besides serving the country with extreme distinction. Today, with me on the panel is Hafiz Ahmed Raffi, a class 12 student of Loyola. Hafiz is a newcomer to Loyola, so to say. He's been there only for a year or two. He's done most of his schooling in the Middle East. He's an avid reader, a video gamer, and an accomplished debater. And he wants to be an aerospace engineer and potentially an astronaut. I'm not really sure whether he's impressed with civil servants, but he finds the foreign service an extremely intriguing career option. Welcome, Hafiz, to the program. We have with us also a stellar panel of 4 Loyolites who are also outstanding civil servants. First up in the list is my dear friend Anish. Anish Rajan finished his 12th from Loyola in 1997. He joined the Foreign Service in 2007 and is presently posted as a Consul General at the Indian Consulate in Durban, South Africa. He's a star quizzer, he's a polyglot, and the problem with him is he is always looking out for trouble. So he served in Cairo. He's also headed the Indian mission in Ramallah, and he opted to serve in Afghanistan in difficult times. Today, he joins us from Durban, where, as we're all aware from newspapers, there is a lot of problem. There's a lot of violence that is there, and we are grateful that he could make it to this session. Welcome, Anish, to this program.
Thank you, Anup, for a very generous introduction and kind remarks. Namaskaram. I'm Anish Rajan from Durban, South Africa. I extend my warm greetings to all of you who have joined us for today's program. And also, I'm very grateful to LOBA for this wonderful series of career guidance programs, and particularly for inviting me to this program. And thanks a lot to Suresh Chetan as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Anish. Our next panelist is Sabareesh. Sabareesh finished his 12th from Loyola in 2001. He joined the Indian Revenue Service, Customs and Central Excise in 2011. He's currently posted as Joint Commissioner Central GST in the Kolhapur Commissionerate. He served in Customs, DRI, as well as GST. He's an occasional teacher. He's a columnist. He wears many hats, and he's had an extremely interesting journey to the civil services. I won't break the suspense. I will let him introduce and I will let him explain his journey to this session. Welcome, Sabareesh, to this program.
Thank you, Jatin. Thank you, everyone.
Our next panelist is a rock star, Prasanth N, aka Collector Bro. He's a man who needs absolutely no introduction to anybody in Kerala, at least. I mean, if not beyond. He finished his 12th from Loyola in 1995, joined the IAS in 2007. Like every IAS officer, he served across various departments, all of it with distinction, but that's not really what makes him what he is. He's always come up with completely out-of-the-box ideas, and the most stellar example being compassionate code, which we are all familiar with, and about which we will talk about in this session. But besides all these accomplishments, he also answers to various other titles. And these titles are best-selling author, a director, scriptwriter, and most recently, I'd say he's a struggling actor. So welcome, Prasanth, to this program. Thank you,
Anup. Thank you for those kind words of introduction. I know you were pulling my leg, but that's okay.
Okay. Our final star panelist is Vyasan R. So Vyasan finished Loyola in 1996, joined the IAS in 2007. He served in multiple capacities in Nagaland and presently serves in a innocuous sounding title. He's Director of the Budget Division in Government of India. So for people who hear, it means nothing, but if you were in Government of India, you really know that this is probably the most responsible and prestigious position in the Government of India at this level. So he brings with him the completely unique perspective of knowing policy making at close quarters in Government of India, including actually being part of drafting the budget for, at least 5 years now. He's a trained economist. He's had degrees in economics and development, both from the Delhi School of Economics as well as from the Harvard Kennedy School. But what makes him a superstar is not any of these. He was Loyola's basketball captain, something I think all of us here sitting can actually relate to. Welcome, Vyasan, to this program.
Thank you, Anup, for those very generous words. I'm yet to get back to my a firm base, so apologies for the faded camera and all. Thank you.
No worries. I'm sure we'll get you. Okay, now before we start, I'm going to start off with two things. I want to put out both a disclaimer and a trivia. I'll start off with the trivia first. So Prasanth, Vyasan, and Anish here were ranked 4, 6, and 7 in the civil services examination in 2006. And this is probably the only time in the history of the examination that one school has had a trio actually representing them in the top 10. So this is like an enormous feat. I mean, of course, for these individuals, but also primarily for Loyola. Now, the disclaimer is something slightly more embarrassing. So everybody sitting here, except Hafiz, of course, who's laughing, all of us here have been contemporaries. All of us here took the same bus to back home. But more importantly, all of us here are also extremely, very, very close friends and dear friends. So Anish, Prasanth, and I were also classmates together from UKG. So if by some chance all this conversation slips down somewhere into friendly banter, it is not intentional. I mean, this is only a product of our relationship. So please bear with us if anything like that happens. So before we start, we'll have two quick polls that need to be gotten through. Binoy, if you could help us with those polls. Binoy? Okay, I think there is some issue with the poll. So, we'll talk about the poll subsequently. So I'll start off with my first question. So I want the really difficult question out in the first go. So Sabareesh here, so we have this whole habit in the bureaucracy of pushing down the most difficult decision to the junior most. So we're going to use that and ask Sabareesh to answer the most difficult question first. So can you, on behalf of the entire panel, summarize what really is the civil services? What are the services that it encompasses? What is the typical job descriptions? And finally, talk about the revenue service.
Yeah, thank you, Chetan. A very good evening to all of you. I'm the baby in the group, so I get the difficult question. Let me ask you a question, like what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about civil services? Maybe a white car with a red beacon, or a white car with a red board, or a police officer with an IPS written here, or an ambassador, an ambassador or a high commissioner. So naturally, we associate the civil services with the Indian Administrative Service, the Indian Police Service, and the Indian Foreign Services. And we all aspire to become either in either of these three services. But there is a long list of around 20 services which are part of what is called as the Indian Civil Service Examination, which is conducted by the Union Public Service Commission. Now, before I go into this services per se, one interesting thing to note is that there is no pre-qualification or a mark barrier that is there for writing the civil services examination. Now, the only thing you need to have is a graduate degree, or you should be in the final year of your graduation. This is unlike maybe an MBA exam where a 50% this thing is required, or a bank PO exam where a 60% is required in graduation. And you must have heard of many civil servants telling that I've just scraped through the 10th standard, 12th standard in graduation, and then they have become celebrated civil servants. So that being the story, I'll just try to unpack the long list of 20 civil services, the services which are part of this examination. So the government performs certain functions, and the government provides certain services on the basis of which there is a classification. For instance, the government does the important job of tax collection. They say that there are only two things which are certain in this world, debt and taxes. So the government has to, for it to survive, it has to collect money. So there are two services for that. It is the Indian Revenue Service Income Tax and the Indian Revenue Service Customs and Indirect Taxation. The income tax deals with basically corporate tax, your income tax, your property tax, and so on. While the indirect taxes deals with the customs, the what is called as the GST. So the government is a huge system whereby there is a lot of expenditure done. So to control the expenditure and to audit the expenditure, there is another service called the Indian Audits and Account Service. Similarly, the government has to do proper accounting. So for that, there is an Indian Civil Account Service, ICAS it is called. There is also a civilian part of defense which is called, which is divided into two services, where it is the Indian Defense Estate Service and there is a Defense Account Service. The government also provides certain services in the form of certain organizations, like probably the railways. So there is a set of railway services by the name Indian Railway Account Service, Indian Railway Traffic Service, Indian Railway Personnel Service, which are now being clubbed into a common brand, which is called the Indian Railway Management Service. So that is in a state of flux now. Similarly, there is another organization called India Post, which is being managed by the India Postal Service, and probably something like Indian Information Service is there, which is now coming to more prominence because of the political communication that is required, that is happening in the form of Man Ki Baat and so on. So there is a long list of services. I'm not going into each and every one in detail, but I've covered the major part of it. Now, one important distinction that need to be kept in mind is like there are three services: the Indian Administrative Service, the Indian Police Service, and the Indian Forest Service, where they are clubbed under what is called as the All India Services, because they are allotted a specific cadre, a specific state or a group of states. While the other services are called as the Central Services, because they come under the administrative control of the central government. Now, I just mentioned about the Forest Service. I think you must have seen, many of you must have seen the movie Sherni, where Vidya Balan plays the role of a very realistic portrayal of an Indian Forest Service officer, where she is in charge of a forest division. So you can be in charge of wildlife sanctuaries, you can be in charge of tiger reserves, and so on. So if you have a bent of mind like that, Indian Forest Service is also a very good option. If you look at the examination part of the Indian Forest Service, although the preliminary exam is same for Indian Forest Service and the Indian Civil Service examination, the other stages of the examination are different for the Indian Forest Services. Now, just two words about my service also. It is called the Indian Revenue Service, Customs and Indirect Taxation. So indirect taxation basically deals with the goods and services tax. That is the tax on goods and the tax on services. For example, if you move into a restaurant, there is an 18% GST that is charged on it. So I collect that. We collect that. Similarly, on the customs side, what imagery comes into your mind? Maybe old Malayalam movies where Mohanlal is in white and white uniform with the gun, or you must have heard about Haji Mastan stories, or even the recent movie of Malik, where there is a lot of customs being involved in that. Basically, customs deals with the movement of goods across international boundaries. So traditionally, it was considered to be a service for revenue generation, but now it has become into a much more important scenario where national security is involved, wildlife trafficking is involved, arms trade is involved, nuclear parts trade is involved, and a set of important activities which are related to the economic security of the nation. So these are the main services involved, and I hope I have given you a fair idea of what kind of services or where you are entering into while you write the civil service examination. Over to you, Chetna.
Thank you, Sabareesh, for that concise yet elaborate explanation of what the civil services actually entail. Now, Anish, as a member of the other central service on the panel, could you describe the foreign service to the uninitiated?
Hafiz, Ministry of External Affairs in Government of India in New Delhi administers the Indian Foreign Service, or IFS. Ministry of External Affairs and IFS formulate and implement the foreign policy of India. We work to further India's interests across the globe to strengthen our bilateral relations with different countries across the globe. IFS officers are, deployed in all Indian diplomatic missions across the world, like embassies, high commissions, consulates, and specialized permanent missions of India to the UN in New York and Geneva. We also hold posts at the level of Undersecretary and above in Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi. IFS officers also are deputed to Ministry of External Affairs branch secretariats in some of the cities. Also in ICCR and ICWA, two autonomous agencies, Indian Council for Cultural Relations and Indian Council for World Affairs in Delhi. And also in their branches across India, we are also, deputed to passport offices across India and also offices of protector of immigrants. And occasionally we do go on deputation to other ministries in Government of India, state government, and some of us also serve in on deputation in international organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Anish. Now to Prasanth. Now, I know everybody kind of knows what the IAS is, but unfortunately, their understanding of the IAS is actually built on the movies that they have seen. So they will associate King, they will associate all sorts of weird movies to what really the IAS is. Now, apart from the fact that the portrayal might not actually be honest, the real problem is that it kind of assumes that the IAS is all about being district collector and district magistrate. Now, you spent 15 years in service. You were district collector for a year and a half or two. And I am reasonably sure you're not going to be a district collector again, like if anybody else. You're too senior to be posted as district collector. So could you actually talk about what really is the IAS? Both what district magistrate does, and also tons of other far more important things that an IAS officer actually does.
Yeah, I think you struck the nail perfectly when you said that weird movies actually determine what's the image that an IAS officer has. And fortunately for IPS officers, there are lesser weird movies, there are better movies which actually portray slightly, realistically. But for IAS officers, yes, it's only the King and the few such movies that give the impression that the job of an IAS officer is equivalent to that of a collector. So, when someone says I cleared IAS, they seem to say that I became collector. That's the only thing they seem to understand. Whereas the post of a district collector or a district administrator is one of the junior posts for a directly recruited IAS officer to gain experience from the field. An IAS or an Indian Administrative Service is designed to be a policy making or a higher civil service, just as you have in any other country, where you are going to have inputs into governance at a higher level. And for that, you need inputs from the field. So when you work as a sub-collector or a collector, you're essentially getting experience, you're getting inputs, you're getting knowledge, or getting a connect from the field. That's all. So we need not be so obsessed with this collectorship. But as you rightly said, even if someone as famous or as effective as Amitabh Khan, for instance, he is CEO of Niti Aayog, but he is still remembered as the ex-collector of Kozhikode if you ask someone in Kerala. So that's the way it works. And secondly, there is this phase of getting knowledge from the field, and then after that, post collectorship, there is the phase where you will be actually contributing to policy level stuff, where you become a secretary. Secretary that is a JS level in the center, which is secretary at the state. You could be in charge of the entire department, entire ministry, and bringing in innovative stuff that innovative, not necessarily, but doing stuff that makes an impact on the entire population in that entire sector. You could be taking steps that could drastically change how things are done. So that is the ultimate target when you say that you want to get into the IAS. Your target is not becoming a district collector. I think this needs to be clearly understood. The job content of an IAS officer is more towards the policy level, and I think we have Vyasan, who is in the center, who might be able to shed more light on the policy level things, because the center is completely cut off from the field, as they say, whereas the states, they have no choice. They have to work in the field, because most of the subjects that have connection with the public are in the state list. So I'll put it that way. To understand IAS as a service, you need to see it as a policy making civil service rather than the field operations. Of course, field operations are there, but it's more for understanding and gaining experience, which will be cross-pollinating at the higher levels. That's the way I'll put it.
Thank you, Prasanth. Vyasan, could you add to what Prasanth has already said, especially with the unique perspective of where you are located? Could you explain to the members of the audience what exactly is the role of an IAS officer in the Government of India?
I think there's been some trouble, connecting to Vyasan. So we'll just get him subsequently. But we've had a fair indicator of all the job descriptions that have been there. We spoke about all the services. I think we have a fair idea now. Now, most of the people who are joining here are basically children in school. So for them, one of the most significant questions that actually arises is how do you clear this examination? So again, starting off with Shabri, would you be able to speak about what really the examination is? What are its components as it currently stands today?
Yeah, as I said before, there is no pre-qualification or a mark barrier for writing the civil service examination. You just need to be a graduate or in the last year of graduation. But if you look at the entire examination process, it is quite a long, drawn-out examination schedule. Like it begins with a preliminary examination in the month of May. It then goes on to a mains examination in the month of October and November, and then finally a personality test in the month of February or March next year. And the final results comes in the month of May next year. So it actually is scheduled over a 1 year period, and that is basically the examination process. Now, if you analyze it one by one, first look at the preliminary examination. As Anup John said before, around 10 lakh people write the examination and only 1,000 people get in. So the preliminary examination is basically an elimination round where a group of people are selected. So it is basically, if you look at the structure of the examination, it is an objective round. Objective questions are there. There are two papers. One is the general studies paper and the other is the civil service aptitude test paper. In the civil service aptitude test paper, it is basically a qualifying paper and you just need to get 33% marks in that. If you look at the general studies paper, there are 5 or 6 subjects involved in it, like history, like geography, like economics and current affairs, like general science, and so on. So these are the two main papers which are involved in the preliminary examination. So what exactly is tested in this preliminary round? If you ask me, basic aptitude is there, and I think this 33% in basic aptitude anyone can clear. I think a 12th standard pass out of Loyola school will easily clear this. If you look at the other part, that is the most critical, the general studies part. And general studies is not just about general knowledge or general awareness as such. If you look at the questions are much more analytical. That means what you call as passive accumulation of knowledge wouldn't help, and it is much more analytical, and you have to, the orientation of studies should be in such a way that you analyze and study. If you move from the preliminary examination to the mains examination, the mains examination involves it is basically descriptive type, and it involves 7 papers of 250 marks, which involves 4 general studies paper, 1 essay paper, and there are 2 papers for an optional subject that you have to choose. The optional subject can be chosen from a list of subjects, which involves a large variety of subjects like sociology, psychology, even engineering, medicine, so on. Almost all the subjects are included in that. But it's basically a descriptive type examination. And this is the most critical thing, because out of the total of, I think around 2025 marks, the bulk of the marks will be with this main examination. So what exactly is tested here? I mean, being a descriptive type exam, your motive should be to write answers, specific answers to specific questions in a very clear, lucid, and simple manner. So that exactly is tested here. And after the mains, it goes to the interview or the personality test. In the personality test, your knowledge is not tested. What is tested there is your basic attitude, maybe your perspective towards things, and of course your basic personality as a whole. And the marks of the the mains examination and the personality test is added upon to declare the final results. So if you look at the number of attempts that is there as of now, I mean, you can write your examination for six times. 6 attempts are there for a general category student up to the age of 32. And for the OBC and the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe sections, the number of attempts are more and the age limit is also more. One important thing that you need to remember is that general studies, if you look at the structure of the examination, general studies is a very important component, and general studies involves different papers like history, like geography, economics, and so on. So you can't become a master of the subject in all these different criteria, different classified subjects. So the focus should be on passing the examination, on clearing the examination. So when you want to focus on clearing the examination, you have to choose what you need to study, and the importance should be given on how to write the examination, how to prepare for the examination. So this is I think I've given you a clear outline of what the exact structure of the examination is and how to go about it.
Thank you, Sabareesh. Now, moving on, Prasanth, there are lots of truths and myths and half-truths regarding how to prepare for the exam itself. Would you like to dispel these myths and clarify for the sake of the young aspirants in the audience?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to add a follow-up question to that also. So, now Sabareesh here spoke about what really is the exam is today. So both Prasanth and Anish, I want both of you to do this follow-up question also. Now, all the kids who are actually sitting here are probably 14, 15. They're not going to give the exam in a year or two. So they're going to give the exam probably 7 years down the line, 8 years down the line. Now, we've seen that the exam has actually changed from 1950. I mean, what it was is not the exam that is there now. So when you speak about these myths and misconceptions, I also want you to potentially look at what the exam will be, say, a decade down the line. I mean, how do you foresee it going, especially with a lot of stuff that is actually happening around? And then give a considered viewpoint to our viewers in this case.
Yeah. I think, the UPSC exam, as they said, UPSC is not the IAS exam, it's the UPSC exam. So UPSC exam has been associated with lots of, half-truths and myths, like this is the toughest exam. It is a tough exam, but it is not the toughest in my opinion, because, this is like any other exam. The only problem is that you have a huge competition here. You have, I think last year or the year before, it was around 15 lakhs actually, 15 lakh applicants for the preliminary, and then a few thousands make it to the mains, and then a few hundreds to the interview. So when you start off with a running race with 15 lakhs, and if you want your preferred cadre, preferred service, everything, you need to come in the first 100 or so, which means, yes, there is a toughness associated with this, but it's not because of the exam, it's only because of the high level of competition, which is different, which is actually different. You need to clearly understand that. Second thing is that there is a myth that only academic toppers can make it to the IAS or the IPS or the IFS. That's not true. You have people who have made it into the services, simply by deciding that, yes, now I'm going to do this exam, I'm going to crack this. That's it. It's not about brains, first of all. It's about dedication, a bit of perseverance as well, because the exam itself goes on for more than 1 year. So, life goes on. Even as the exam goes on one side, you'll have your little problems in your life, even big problems. You might have a romance going around. You might have a heartbreak. All these things happen, and still you have to remain focused on the exam. So that's what is required of you. And then, the major misconception is that civil service aspirant has to know everything under the sun. Or the moon. But I think this is not true at all. What you need to know is the syllabus and the previous question papers and devise a method of cracking it just like any other examination without being worried about the intense competition involved. I think Anush will bear with me that each time we apply, each time we go through the exam process, it's a different experience altogether. So what really is required is maybe a mindset, a psychological approach towards this exam, which will enable you to crack it with the minimum bruises. Anyway, you will get bruised while you go through such a tough process. Yes, so I think Anish might be able to add a bit more onto those, and then maybe we'll go on to answering what Anup asked further.
Yeah, thanks, Prasanth. You've covered everything well. So, and Anup had given a lot of sub questions. So I agree with what you said now and what Anup said in a previous episode, that lot of things change. I mean, for example, just preparing for this program, I was going through the pattern of the exam and the syllabus and on the last 2-3 days, and I was surprised. That I was not keeping a track of all these changes happening, and so I think it was from 2011 when probably Sabareesh joined the services that there have been a lot of changes. So when you say when should I start preparation, I would say preparation should start probably after class 12. But serious preparations or intensive preparations should start probably in the final years of graduation or post-graduation, as the case may be. And there are also a lot of candidates who join civil services after reasonable work experience, also after doing completing or doing their PhD. So we all have very different stories. And if you look at when you should start, it's a bit like when should you start preparing for the medical and engineering entrance examination? You can say you should be very serious at the business end of schooling, which is 9 and above. But for me, I found the entrance examination very tough to clear in those years, because I took my academics, particularly science subjects, very lightly in classes 5 to 7, and I never got out of that hole that I dug myself into. So in that way, you need to really understand when to change the gears. And I thought I would be ready for the exams after my graduation. But in this panel, I cleared UPSC only in the 3rd attempt, so it took me a lot of time. And some of these issues I would like to answer in detail later in this program. But regarding some of the myths, we have to go to Delhi. I could not afford to go to Delhi. It was those are very costly, coaching programs. And a little bit of arrogance as well. I was very, very particular that I clear by basing my preparations in Trivandrum. So for most of the subjects, I studied myself using these good textbooks and guidebooks. And I had postal coaching from an institute in Bengaluru. And for economics, which was my main subject, I had gone to one late Professor Narayanan sir in Thiruvananthapuram. And the general studies, I thought I could just improvise my quizzing skills, but I never, even for interview coaching, which is very, very important, and ideally I should have done, but I was very adamant that I would not take a coaching program anywhere else. And probably my interview gurus were Anup and Prasanth. I just spoke to them and went and faced the board and got 230. So out of 300, so which was very good marks, and probably resulted in me getting a high rank also. You can call it fluke or blessing of God Almighty. So our stories are different, and
but it's bad
so
that you're not
that,
crediting us. You never credited us. That's bad.
yeah, all of you are my Gurukul. So I mean, this is an opportunity I take to really thank all of you, and a lot of other friends also. I mean, Vishal, Jaiko, Cherry, Sunando have really helped me in that long journey. So some of the other things I think Anup would like to ask specific questions, so I would try to answer to that. So we have to understand that we all have very different stories before we join the services.
So like Anup had asked something about the changing trend of the exam. So I thought I'll just put in a word. Over the years, the exam has changed for the better, I'll say, because UPSC used to be a very elite kind of an exam where only the IIT graduates or maybe the St. Stephen's and offsprings of civil servants. It was a preserve of those people from big towns, big cities. And we were all kind of in the outskirts. But I think that has changed dramatically post 2000, I'll say, because the UPSC has also taken a very conscious effort to change the exam pattern, which is not easy for these coaching institutes to crack, because every time they're trying something new. And you'll find that lots of people from small towns and villages are now making it, brilliant minds from across India. And small town like Trivandrum, I still remember when our results came out. In the first 20, there were, I think, seven of us were in the first 20, I guess, till rank 13 and 20, and all were from Kerala. And most of us had prepared from Trivandrum. So I think that is proof of the changing trend of the UPSC exam. And in the future, I don't know how to predict it, but then maybe it will become more objective and it will become more fair, I guess, because earlier you had more than one optional subject. Now you have just one optional subject, and you have more emphasis on qualities that really determine how good a bureaucrat would be, how accurate that assessment is. That's another issue, but still the change in the exam pattern is for the good. That's what I'll say. And for preparation, yes, for hardcore preparation, you need to start preparing only when you're at least in the final years of graduation. But having an aptitude, reading generally, more things, going through newspapers, taking a keen interest in international affairs or scientific, discoveries. These are things which can be inculcated as a child. So I think that would be the only thing which we should be doing right now in school.
Absolutely true, Prasanth. I think you guys made extremely relevant points. Now, I want to pick your brains on exactly what you were actually talking about right now. When you spoke about how the service has evolved, you've also spoken about how the elite character of the service has changed. Now we have people from completely different backgrounds coming in. And I think the only central part of what binds everybody is their determination that they are going to crack this exam. I mean, apart from everything else, it's finally that they decide that they want to do it, that they're going to do it at any cost, and that is actually what makes a difference. Now, because it has actually become so broad-based, could you actually talk about how exactly has this really benefited the service? I mean, in terms of public service delivery. Second, in coming from a very, reasonably close background like Loyola, how it actually exposes you to a completely different setting, and how it is, and how we end up actually being changed as a person through that process. Anish, would you like to first take that question?
I think that's what I think Prasanth said. That has really changed over the. India has changed over the last 7 decades. So I think the services have also undergone that change. The history of services of ICS and Foreign Service established in 1946. So there was a way of recruitment. So after that, once you started, it's very similar to, I would say, I had to bring in cricket somewhere to the discussion. So just like the selection of the Indian cricket team earlier used to be, you would see only from the elite cities. You would hardly see someone from Jharkhand or someone from smaller towns of Tamil Nadu or Kerala, or you would see Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai. Similarly, civil service also, like Prasanth said, used to be candidates. They had a huge advantage who were from elite institutions. But as India opened up, there's been empowerment of people of all backgrounds. And particularly me, I would say that even when we speak that we all want to bring on and be part of these socio-economic transformations, but individually also, for many of us, civil services provide a socio-economic upliftment. And I'm telling that that's a very, it has got a complex meaning, but for me, that is what I saw in Missouri also, that we were people from all backgrounds. I mean, whether it's financially, whether it is, disadvantaged sections of society, where you're coming from elite, metros, or you're coming from village background. So I think that has to go. And I don't want to use the cliched dialogue of Joseph Alex from The King, but the fact is that the real India is, so the civil services should reflect the real India. Like when I was in Loyola, for me, a lot of things I felt that, I had fee concession and all up to grade 7, and I felt a little bit, at times I knew that, and I had to really leave. Even when I wanted to do certain things, I would always know that it is not possible. The school fees was a big percentage of my father's salary, and my mother was a homemaker. But when I went to University College after Loyola, I became with possibly the most privileged and the elitist in my class. So I've seen Loyola, I've seen University College, and that has really been a good combination for me while I'm formulating policy and while I'm speaking with people of different backgrounds. Even when I went to UAE, we would see a lot of Indians who are really struggling, and this is what Hafiz and I discussed a few weeks ago, that the labor problems and those issues. But when you go to certain other countries, our IT sector is facing a problem. So all these things, to really do that effectively, we need people from all the states, we need people from all the different backgrounds. So that's the way I look at civil services, and I hope all of you hold a similar opinion.
Thank you, Anish. I think the conclusion has generally been that the civil service, at the end of the day, a wonderful melting pot. Where people who basically believe in themselves eventually come in. Now, there's always this cliche that the mind is everything. But, it's all very well to say. We all know, we can go in with a lot of determination and say we'll crack this exam. But this is all a wonderful statement that we can make after we clear this exam. The process through which one actually goes to this exam is a process where, if I'm not wrong, is a process where we actually lose our sanity in the process. There have been moments where we actually end up losing our sanity. Now, everybody has a different story. Even if somebody's gotten on the first attempt, even if somebody's gotten in the fourth attempt, everybody has a different story as far as the struggles that people went through for as far as the examinations concerned. How do you really remain sane through this process? Shabri, could you really start off by talking about the struggles through this examination process?
My sphere of preparation was actually a story of more failures than success. I got through the examination in my 4th attempt, which was the last attempt. At that point of time, only 4 attempts were there, and successively I failed in 3 attempts. So that's why I said it's more of failures than success. So during that process, during that learning curve, I've learned so many things. And in this limited time, if I can summarize, firstly, the most important, the challenge which was there was during this process, during these successive failures, people keep asking you what are you doing? Are you wasting parents' money? Or you should do like this, you should do like that. But this is a time when I had to force my individuality. I had to, you have to believe in yourself. You have to be yourself, and then you have to fight on. Then only you will be able to, go through these, difficult times. Also, there was a lot of, decision making involved. If you ask me why I failed in these, first 3 attempts, was that in one optional subject which I chose, and it was a very lovely subject, it was psychology. The more I studied, the less marks I got. So that's why when I speak about civil service examination, I always tell that your focus should be on clearing the examination, but not becoming a subject expert. So what happened was, the more I studied, I think that the person who corrected the papers was not able to understand what I was writing. So, if you have watched, I think, some TV series like Aspirants or something, they say that your optional subject is like your girlfriend, because you should like the subject, but at the same time, for me at that point of time too, I had to take a decision to ditch that subject, and I had to ditch my girlfriend. So I was not a Casanova who could juggle around with girlfriends. But it was, that girlfriend was a very, very, very difficult choice for me. But I had to do that, and I did that. And at that point in time, I remember that after 3 attempts, then I had to unlearn myself. And unlearning myself, I had to take a 1-year break. I just took off. I taught in a college for 1 year, and then so that I could unlearn, and then I could come back in a different mode. And then I took up a subject. I just prepared for 3 months, and I cleared with that with good marks. So those decision making was extremely critical for me. And people would say so many things at that point of time, like how can you study in 1 year? How can you clear? And so on. And over this preparation time was like a harrowing time at that point of time, if you think of so many things. So one important thing that I would say is very important is like the temperament that you have. I think people here are masters of that. I remember Prasanth Chetan at that point of time in one examination. I think he just got married, and he was coming and telling me. Just before the exams, he was telling me, "Oh, I just got married, and my market is really down." So he was able to. His general temperament was so good that he was able to deal with examination so well, and I think that's why he's. Even after clearing the services and inside the services, he's able to do so multiple things at the same time. Temperament doesn't come to everyone so naturally. I remember, Tendulkar in his. I should also bring the subject of cricket. Just like Anish Rajan, I am also a cricket fan. Tendulkar, towards the end of his career, I think after 20 years of international cricket, he used to say that even when I go to bat now, in the first 2 or 3 balls, I'm very, very, very tensed. So, temperament, there is nothing wrong in being jittery or nothing wrong in being tense. The only thing is you need to work through it. That's one thing I learned during the course of my preparation. And I used to train other aspirants also. So one thing I tell them is that one phrase I used to tell them is that even when you are in hell, you just need to keep walking. You have to work through your this thing. You will have a lot of troubles, lot of issues. Difficulties in maintaining sanity, but you have to just work through that. And in the last analysis, let me tell you that never be a perfectionist. Never try to be a perfectionist. You cannot finish the syllabus in civil services. The syllabus is so vast. You cannot, study things in a very perfect manner or anything like that. What you need to do is to just put your best foot forward. That's the last analysis, I think.
Too many cricketing anecdotes, and we have another panelist who is also a psychology optional. So we will ask Prasanth with the psychology optional to tell us how he actually understood the mind during the process.
Sabareesh was mentioning about temperament. I think Sabareesh and the later batches, they had to do with just one optional subject. Nowadays, you just need one optional subject. So you need just one girlfriend. So your temperament is only that good. We had to do with 2 optionals, and so our temperament was better. On a serious note, I think he struck the exact point. Everyone asks, how many hours should I study, or what are the books that I should be referring? Someone said that we should study 12 hours. Someone said that it will take me 2 years. Someone said it's 3 years. What is the exact formula for clearing the UPSC? Now, what I always tell them is, firstly, you need to assess where you are standing. Okay, you have a particular standing in the order of knowledge or whatever, which is required for clearing the UPSC. Suppose you look through, you go through the previous question papers and syllabus and all that stuff, then you understand that this is the position, this is the level where you have to reach to clear the UPSC. And then you assess where you stand. I'm pretty sure that you will be somewhere here only, definitely not above that. So you will be somewhere here. And then there is a gap which you have to fill. Now, this gap is very unique for each individual because you will be coming from different backgrounds. Just like Anish said, he didn't focus much on the science subject. There could be someone else who took engineering and he had totally ignored economics or political science. So as far as he is concerned, getting to know the Indian Constitution itself is a big thing. So this gap is unique for each individual, and how much time is required for that, how much effort has to be put in to clear that gap, that is unique for each individual. So this is an understanding which everyone has to derive on his own. So there is no standard formula which can apply to everyone. So each individual has his own way. Ekla Chalore is the simple thing. And as Sabareesh was saying, there'll be lots of people to pull you down, lots of people to discourage you when it comes to the UPSC exam because of the competition. Because people say you're not going to clear it. Who else has done it? When you look around, you don't find so many people who have cleared it. Unlike, say, Bihar or UP, where it is a trend. Everyone in their life is supposed to give it a try at least once. You give it an attempt because there is an aspiration level associated with it. Whereas in Kerala, you are not really into it. Here you have good professional choices, even otherwise, in the private sector or going abroad. There's lots of opportunities. So you don't have successful candidates as models or examples around you. So it's very difficult to convince your friends or relatives especially. So when you go for some marriage, most probably you will find your compatriots, your classmates, your cousins, all of them well settled in some company and drawing huge salaries, and you are what are you doing? You are preparing for the civil service, and immediately your relative will say, okay, that's okay, but what do you actually intend to do? As if you are not destined to clear it at all. In fact, I remember when I was preparing, nobody in my circle, in my family circle, took it, except of course for my parents. The others wouldn't really trust you to clear it. So once I said, one of the astrologers had said that I'm going to become an IAS officer, and then there's no question. Okay. Then so you definitely you can give it a try, which means your own conviction doesn't matter. Someone else's conviction in you is okay. This is the way the world functions. So, you just have to go ahead and clear it. That's the only thing we can do as far as UPSC exam is concerned.
Yeah, Prasanth, those really insightful and very, very interesting anecdotes. I think what really everybody was trying to push through is basically the fact that the civil service is primarily a master of none but a jack of all trades. So how do you get to be the jack of all trades for the examination is really the skill set that is required. Anish, I want you to talk about the long process. Please ignore all our coffee house conversations that we all had. That is not what we are interested in hearing. But do tell the audience about the long story in the civil services.
Yeah, thanks, Anup. So I think I could also see some of the questions being posted by Loyolites. So people would really want to know about this preparation part. See, what Prasanth said, the syllabus of UPSC, Civil Services Examination, which is often called IAS examination because I think most of the people write UPSC examination with IAS as first choice. So it is, I would say it is manageable, but it is impossible for any one person to master all this. Unless there could be few geniuses, which happens in school also. That you would be, I would remember names like Anup and Srikanth and Gokul. I'm on a nostalgia trip right now, who would do very well in subjects. So there are few students who throughout can do well in all subjects. Rest of us means people like me who are average, who were average in academics and who were extremely poor in certain subjects. Our strengths were always few subjects. So I would remember, and that is the strategy I used throughout. At the end of the day, like Sabareesh told, every exam has a strategy and tactics. You have to crack that examination. I didn't bother how to prepare, how to crack CAT. I was only focused on UPSC. So in school, I was good in history and Malayalam. And I was average in English and Hindi and economics and geography and biology. And chemistry, physics, and maths, I would not even want to go into that area. So similarly, when I started preparation for UPSC, I realized that the GS syllabus is vast. Although because of quizzing and all, I could manage, but quizzing and UPSC has only, very, very small connection, especially in history and all. It will help you a little bit in mastering. The trivia part, the ancient history, if you remember the names of the, but at the end of the day, the syllabus is so diverse that all these questions, science, history, economics, statistics, current affairs, these are all fairly equally divided. So you can easily skip your weak areas. And this is not just for the prelims, the preliminary exam, which is multiple choice questions, Sabareesh, right? Even now? I think it's still multiple choice questions. So again, you have the choice, and
it is multiple choice.
And Loyolites are masters of MCQs. And when it comes to mains, like Prasanth said, I am nowadays I would feel that it is better for candidates like me, because we only have one subject, whereas I had to take two subjects. I took my graduation and master's subject economics, and my second subject was political science. So whereas now you only have to take one subject, which means that there are more general studies papers, so more generalist and master of none people, candidates like me have an advantage. But again, I'll have to correct myself now, because in UPSC, when I cleared in my third penultimate attempt, general studies backfired, and I had absolutely insane marks in economics, which I've not figured out even now, because I had more marks than the Kerala University rank holder, who is my batchmate. And even in Missouri, there were, like in school, there were people comparing marks even after joining the services. So when one of my colleagues had this long list, so I was shocked to find that I had, very, very high marks in economics. So that's why I'm saying there is a lot of subjectivity. Even in economic syllabus, it was, and political science syllabus was very, very large. I just analyzed previous question papers. I was looking for a pattern. I figured out that there are areas which are, you can omit a lot of the syllabus. And and these tactics are all useful. And when you clear, you can say, oh, my tactic worked. And like Sabareesh told, in the third attempt, fourth attempt, I was under a lot of stress. And it is not a very, looking back, it is crazy to say that after post-graduation, I just sat at home and kept on writing exam year after year, doing nothing else. So I joined civil services at the age of 27. After sitting at home for 4 years preparing, and you go to social events and people say, what are you doing? So somebody is an engineer in US, somebody is doing PG in, in Delhi, and I was preparing for civil service examination, year after year. So it was not easy, and you have to really tackle. Before I go into how to select the subjects and things like that, I would like to listen what Prasanth and Sabareesh would like to say. But my thing is that for most of the candidates, you have to be very, very wise about choosing the part. Don't try to cover everything unless you have been traditionally good at mastering subjects and you have covered the syllabus over a long period of time. Over to you, Prasanth and Sabareesh.
Well, I think you have covered it pretty well. Choosing the syllabus and having a very unique or customized approach for yourself that will work only for you. That is the sum and summary of the UPSC preparation, and cracking the method of, and that is your own unique cracking method. It's not a method that you are going to very easily popularize it and everyone gets to know how to do that. That really doesn't work. And the fact that it is a psychological game at the end of it. And also, I think we need to mention here that most candidates do take quite a few attempts to clear the exam. And sometimes people think that, okay, is it worth doing that? Is it worth that wait to get into this service? I feel that it is entirely worth. And there is a reason why multiple attempts have to be made, because earlier, long back, the age of entry was 21 onwards, and the closure was actually, I think, 23, 24 or something like that. So you only had a small window of opportunity. So the people who would be appearing for this exam would be appearing just once or twice. That's it. Now you have this extended, duration, through which you can keep on appearing, and there'll be increased efficacy for the people who are writing later on. So you'll be competing when you are doing the entry for the first time. When you are appearing for the first time, you'll be competing with veterans who have had a lot of experience, who have improved, who have mastered the technique, who have understood the exam much better than you. So obviously, you are pitted at a very formidable, competitor at the other end, which means that you might have to take a couple of, attempts, and that's a reality across India. So nothing to worry on that count also. So which also translates into another fact, that is that you should be mentally prepared to perhaps write a few times. It's not going to be there on a platter. You might have to take few attempts, and to be mentally prepared for that, to be logistically prepared for that. That's also quite important point, I feel. Sabareesh.
No, I think both of you have covered everything. But just to add exam clearing part. So the most important thing would be then your question paper, because what is asked in the exam should be first kept in mind while you are going through the syllabus, while you are going through while you are studying. In the studying process itself, you should know what questions are asked. So then there is you can exactly choose what to study. And then when it comes to the mains examination, I think what is very much required is clarity. You need to express things in a very simple terms with clarity and specific answers to specific questions. So the problem is, there is a general studies paper, so much quantity to study. So you amass knowledge so much to the extent that you try to produce what you know, but that is not what's required. You need to give specific answers to specific questions.
There is one audience question on the examination which we will take before we move on to the next section. So the audience question is basically that there is a query whether if your optional subject is the same as your graduation subject, is there any benefit? So if there's any one person who wants to take that question. Go ahead, Anish.
I think, Anup, we are trying to control the controllables in this examination. So there is a huge advantage in at least getting one subject. But you and I know that there are many of our colleagues who have not done that. And particularly, I would see that as a trend in engineering subjects. And I don't know about others. But here I can see on the panel that you had taken law as one of your subjects. I think Prasanth also. I don't remember your subjects.
No, actually,
as well. So there's a huge advantage.
I did law, but I took public administration and psychology. So yeah, it's different.
Yeah. So basically, I would sum up saying there's a huge advantage, but I wouldn't be surprised seeing that there's a good number of people who, for one reason or other, may not be comfortable at the business end of preparation in their early 20s to not stick with their master or graduate subject and stick to something with a smaller syllabus or a scoring. So all those tactic wise, yeah, that's possible.
I'd like to thank the panel for talking about the examinations and how to prepare for them and being in the right mindset of them in such great detail, because the UPSC examination has its own level of prestige, and being in the right mindset to clear it is certainly immense, as well as knowing how to prepare and knowing what the exam actually entails. Now, moving on to the next aspect of civil service itself, one of the most attractive parts is its training, right? And the foreign service has the longest training periods of all the services. Anish, could you give us a peep into the process and how it changed you to do that?
Hafiz, yes, foreign service probably has one of the longest training periods. It has been again reduced considerably. Earlier it used to be 4 years, now it's reduced to 3 years. So that's a long period of probation. And that is also because of the language training. So like all of us, after joining the civil services, we start with a common training program in Missouri at the National Academy of Administration for 4 months. Then the IAS continue there with their specialized training program. Rest of us, we all go to our different training institutes. So when we for me, I joined in August 2007. By December, I came to Delhi, and then I had 1 year training program that has been now reduced to 6 months. So in these 6 months, what happened? We get a lot of lectures and classes from senior officers in the Ministry of External Affairs, also a lot of professors of international relations, classes that cover administration, establishment, accounting, the consular, passport, visa matters, diplomatic skills, negotiation, communication skills, cultural diplomacy, economic and commercial diplomacy, trade, investment. So that itself shows that foreign policy covers almost everything. And then we end the program with that part of the training program with a call on the Honorable President, Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Vice President, Honorable External Affairs Minister, Ministers of State of External Affairs. And we also have a mission orientation visit, which for many of us is our first foreign trip. We go to a neighborhood mission. For us, we had 1 week training program in Dhaka and in Chittagong, Bangladesh. Then we also have Army, Air Force, and Navy attachments. We had one week. Right now we have a 1 week state attachment. When I did training, it was a 1 month district training in Jharkhand. We have a Bharat Darshan program, which is, I think, almost all the services have that, where we tour India, we visit many cities, we interact with state governments, we interact with lot of institutions. Then we come for the desk attachment at Ministry of External Affairs. So this part has been now reduced from 12 months to 6 months, and the desk attachment has been reduced from 8-9 months to 2 months. So desk attachment, we are put to learn on the job. We are deployed in these divisions in Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi. Most of the divisions are like departments and sections. They are territorial. We have Americas. We have Europe, we have Latin America, it goes like that. We also have UN divisions. So in my case, I had opted for Arabic as my compulsory foreign language or CFL. This is again a combination of choice and rank. So I was deployed in Gulf division, which dealt with the 6 GCC countries, Iraq and Yemen. So you work with the Joint Secretary and other undersecretaries who would teach you the work, and you are given small tasks, and then the gear changes as you move along. And then at the end of it, you go for your language training, which is a bit like going back to school or college. Depending on the language, Arabic and Chinese and few other languages are 2-year courses. French, Spanish, German, most of them are 1-year courses. So, I had taken Arabic, so I went to Cairo, Egypt. I joined the university, the American University in Cairo, for a diplomats program. So I did a 2-year intensive program. I cleared my language test, and then I was confirmed in the service in 2011 after 4 years. So that is a lengthy training program.
Anish, on the subject of your language training, so there have been multiple people who have actually asked this question. So please clarify it for the audience. So multiple people want to know whether it is necessary for you to actually know a foreign language before you join the IFS. Please clarify for the audience.
No, absolutely not. If that had been a criteria, a lot of us would not have been able to, we would not have been selected for foreign service. But when I went to UAE, people used to joke that Malayalam was more relevant than Arabic there for my daily functioning. So you don't need to know any language, but like I say, all these skills are always helpful. Because ministry is only going to teach you one language, right? But if you know multiple languages, it always helps. I mean, like, so that's something which it's not compulsory, but you get a compulsory language, and if you have time and energy, you can take more languages, and it becomes part of your CV that you are you can speak so many languages, which is sometimes good in certain postings. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Anish. Prashant, I want you to talk about the training program for the IAS. In particular, I want you to deal with two aspects. One is basically when you come into district practical training, what really happens. Second, you basically have to, I mean, Vyasan is unfortunately not able to make it. So you have to talk about what the training and the initial life is, not necessarily for somebody in Kerala looking at the civil servants in Kerala, but also what happens across the country. So if you could really talk about the initial life of an IAS officer.
Yeah. I think in the case of IAS officers, we start off with a training jointly. Actually, all of us, all services together, we start off training in Mussoorie. It's called the foundation course. So in fact, we were fortunate that all of us could do the foundation course together there. It was more of a get-together of Loyola there. So after that, we go to the field. We have something called the sandwich training module, which means that there is certain, some classroom sessions, and then you go to the field, and then you come back, and again you have the classroom sessions. So what is this field? Field is basically you're sent to work and get trained under a district collector who is already there, who is an experienced senior officer who must be there in the field for quite some time. So I was fortunate to be trained in Calicut only. I was in Kozhikode only as an assistant collector. That was also good fun. In fact, this field training is one occasion when you get to interact with the public for the first time. You get to see issues. You get to get involved. Actually, whatever the collector assigns you, mostly because he would like an IAS officer to get involved, and especially things that involve public interest. It could be law and order issues. It could be any of the departments in the district which the collector assumes thinks that it's important that an IAS officer should get involved. So you get fair exposure to excise. It could be health. It could be even diverse departments like PWD or water, whatever. I mean, all these departments are there in the district for getting involved. So while we go through that process, you get to interact, you get to understand the intricacies of how you manage public, how you manage people. There are two ways of handling it as well, because this is the first time you get to exercise power and raw power in that sense, because till then you are just a college pass out. You have just undergone a few classroom sessions in Mussoorie, and that's the end of it. For now, you are actually exercising power. You would be notified as an executive magistrate under the CRPC, and during the training period, you are also notified as a judicial magistrate of the second class, which means you could try petty crimes and all that. You do sitting as a judicial magistrate as well. These are all intended to give you an insight into how the system works. I forgot to mention that you're sent for this field training in the cadre which you are allotted to. So if you're allotted to Kerala cadre, you come to Kerala. You will be assigned to a district collector in Kerala. Suppose you are assigned to, say, Vyasan is missing. Vyasan was in Nagaland cadre, so he would have gone to Nagaland, in one district in Nagaland. He gets his exposure there. So that's it. And I think while interacting with the public for the first time, it kind of decides which direction you are going to take in your career as well. Because you could get overwhelmed with power, you could get overwhelmed with the authority which you yield for the first time, the fascination with the paraphernalia that goes along with the service. Often people say, why did you come into the service? And the answer is, I was motivated. I was inspired by seeing the car of the district collector with the light and the flag and all that stuff, or the police officer who was saluting. That's why most people get interested in the service in the first place, especially so with the uniform jobs like IPS, because that authority or power is something that fascinates any individual. But I think when you are in the field for the first time, you also get to see the pain of the public. You get to understand that there are instances where your slight little intervention can alleviate the pain and suffering of a lot of people. If you take a bit of active interest in certain things, a bit of compassionate approach towards things, it could drastically change the life, quality of life, the standard of life of lots of people. And there are lots of people who don't have that opportunity, who are totally sidelined. The system is kind of rude and rigid and sometimes cruel. To run a system like that, like a machine, you don't need human beings. Why you are being posted as an officer there is to bring in that human element. And I think the earlier we realize it, the better. So the training period is more of that humanizing aspect as well. That's what I felt.
Thank you, Anish and Prasanth, for talking about how the training is in the IFS and the IAS. Now, Sabareesh, could you tell us about how the training for a young IRS officer operates?
Yeah, I belong to the IRS Customs and Indirect Taxation. So there are two parts. One is indirect taxes, which basically deals with goods and services tax now. The training in the GST side is much more academic oriented. It deals with taxation laws, accounting, and so on. But the training in customs part is much more interesting. Why? Because as I said, it deals with the movement of goods across international borders. And international borders, who man these international borders? For example, if you look at sea, the Navy and the Coast Guard are in action. If you look at the land, in most places like Bangladesh and Nepal, the army is in action. So we have exclusive attachments with the Navy. We have exclusive attachments with the Indian Coast Guard. We have exclusive attachment with the army. Then if you look at what kind of goods are involved in customs activity, for example, wildlife. So we have an exclusive attachment with the Forest Academy. There is a full-fledged training with the Wildlife Institute of India. Then we have initially we were in control of what is called as the Central Bureau of Narcotics. So this is it is now being taken from our ministry to the Home Ministry, but most of our people go on deputation to the narcotics in this CBN or Central Bureau of Narcotics. So we had an exclusive training there in CBN, in Gwalior, in Neemach, where there are a lot of fields. In CBN, what they do primarily is they are involved in the legal cultivation of poppy. Like these are required for certain medicinal purposes, for pharmaceutical use, and so we are involved in the control of such activity. So narcotics is one sphere of work we have, and that training was quite interesting. Apart from that, customs training also involves the airports, interface with the Airport Authority of India, and so on. So the best part is there is so much of variety in this training. So much of diversity associated with so much of specific areas like what do you do, what kind of interface exists with the army, the navy, and so on. And if you look at the initial phase, initial life when you come into the IRS, you are actually into a Group A position. That means what you do is original work in the sense that you are not the kind of drudgery that you usually associate with bureaucracy is usually not there, because you are entering into a position where your immediate subordinate has an experience of something like 10 to 30 years. So you are doing proper original work, and that is actually quite interesting. And apart from that, you usually head an office. And there is in that office there would be no one above you, and that hierarchy plays a big role in government. So that control you would be having. And even within the IRS, if you are interested in say technically you are tech savvy, there is a separate department by the name DG Systems. There, if you are interested in accounts, then there is a separate department by the name DG Audit, where you are basically auditing different accounts of organizations. And if you are interested in, say, enforcement, then there is an intelligence wing for both customs and in the GST part. So there is a lot of variety and diversity within the service itself.
Okay, thank you.
Sabareesh.
I want to ask a few audience questions quickly before we get into the final questions. So the first question, Prasanth, what really were the traits of an IAS officer that you thought helped you in your career?
I think, you need to be able to keep changing your jobs, because IAS is one profession where you really don't know which assignment you will be taking, over what are you going to do the next day. You really don't know. So one day you might be in charge of excise, the other day you might be in charge of tourism, you might be in charge of something else. And I remember at one point of time I was simultaneously in charge of quite a few things. I remember as KTDC managing director, like I was running a few bars, and you had this beer parlors and all that. So I would apply for license, and who issues the license? It was the excise commissioner. And who was that? That was me myself sitting there. So I would issue the license. And from where would he go and procure the liquor? He would procure it from Beverages Corporation. And who was the Bevco MD? That was me myself holding charge at the point of time. So it was split personality going around. It could be at the same time, it could be at different times also. Different tasks, different assignments, which have totally, the objectives could be a total variance. Still, you manage to, immediately grasp things and understand the intricacies, and you start running from the moment you hit the ground. So that is one quality that's really required for an IAS officer. Secondly, you are a generalist. You are not expected to get into the minute details of anything, but at the same time, that larger managerial capacity of understanding any task and for finding out what is key to any assignment and starting to prioritize and make things moving. That's very important. And maybe having a temperament that really doesn't put you down. There'll be lots of occasions when you interact with difficult people. It could be the public, it could be politicians, it could be bureaucrats within the system. How to handle that and go ahead with a knowledge of picking the right kind of battle, choosing the battles, as they say. And going ahead with a positive frame of mind, I'll say. Those are the key things. The rest of the things will automatically fall in place.
Anish, the audience also wants to know at what rank will you get the IFS?
IFS, as I say that, I mean, most of the people are writing the exam to join the IAS. So, I was ranked 7. So these days, again, like the intake has gone up in so many years. So obviously, we are all looking for a ceiling, and it varies from general to OBC to SC, ST and other categories. I'm not very sure. I don't want to give an exact number, but I would say always try to be in the top 10, because you can't determine whether you're going to fall 7 or 77 or 277. So that is not something you can't determine. For example, if I say, okay, you have to reach 100, probably cutoff is 140. How do you ensure that you fall within 140? You can't. So you have to try your best to be in the top 10, and you end up being that to a combination of all kinds of crazy things out being played in the universe.
So to Sabareesh, I have a question about. Sorry.
No, sorry. I probably have not given a satisfactory answer, but that's also because last 2-3 years, I'm not tracking what is the rank of the last person who joined the IFS across any category. So I don't have a number in my mind. Probably when we joined also, it was like across categories, it varies. So right now, I don't think you should think too much about the cutoff rank, and let's focus on the bigger picture.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the vacancies every year as well. So there's no point trying to decide right now, because anyway you are in school. So by the time you'll be writing, we don't know what the vacancy of that year would be.
So we've received an audience question about the number of vacancies that you just brought up. The question seems to be, if the number of seats, will it increase in the coming years, or will it decrease, or will it remain mostly stable? Like, what will the trend be regards to the number of seats?
Well, I think there is a very clear answer for this. How many seats do you require? for UPSC, this is the question. How many seats do you require? For someone who is preparing, he needs just one seat. So just don't get bothered about the number of seats. You are not going to occupy more than one seat. So if there is one seat, prepare for that. That's the only philosophy that works with this UPSC preparation.
Absolutely.
I think that's a wonderful answer. Now, there is this real elephant in the room which we have not addressed, and we are running short of time. So I wanted, to run through all of you. Now, whenever we talk about the civil services, the big issue that really comes up is of political interference in the work of the civil servant, and that the honest civil servant is unable to do his job. It is a perception. We really, unless we really address this and resolve it for the young audience, we're not going to actually motivate the youngsters to actually get it. So, Prasanth, with somebody who's actually had the most number of, controversies to his credit, I want you to first take this question first.
Anup and I have often discussed this, politician thing and all that stuff. And, I think the general public is biased watching movies and reading, newspaper reports, which largely overplay or, they seem to give too much of an emphasis on this so-called rift between a bureaucrat and a politician. Firstly, we need to understand that we live in a democracy, and in democracy, the political executive is the one, he is the one or she is the one who is going to decide policies, and that's the final word. Let's accept it. And most political interferences are not bad. In our experiences, or I think Anup will also share this opinion. It's the politician who brings things of concern to our notice, because they are the ones who are working in the field. They have their ears to the ground, so they let us know the areas where we need to interfere. And most of the things which they suggest or tell us are fair things. Those are things which we should be doing. They are only trying to accelerate or push it through. So there is this bias that political interference is bad. That's not acceptable, first of all. Now, the other point is, why should a political interference be, seen as something that's adverse to the, whole process of development or welfare or whatever? We are always trying to paint them as villains, which is not true. In fact, I have had interaction with some politicians who are really gems. The kind of work they do, the kind of effort they take up, that's phenomenal. Now, let's assume that there are a few bad apples. Okay, even if there are a few bad apples amongst politicians, there is no escaping from them so long as you are in the society. You'll be interacting with them as a doctor, as an engineer, as anybody, as a teacher, whatever be it, whatever job you do, whatever profession you undertake, you will still be dealing with them. In fact, if you're inside the civil service, I'll say you have much more freedom. You have much more, opportunity to say no to things which you don't agree to, which maybe someone else cannot do. In that sense, we are very privileged because we have the protection of the Constitution as well. There's lots of things in our favor which an ordinary citizen doesn't get. So I think you don't need to be really worried about this thing, and it's a relative advantage that a civil servant has while interacting with the politician, good or bad, whatever advantage that we have. That is what brings us into the limelight and unnecessarily creates a bit of a hype as well. So I don't know whether I've answered it properly.
Yes, Prasanth, along with it, you are also able to make movies. You are able to write your scripts, and you're also able to be a terrible actor, like I keep saying. So all of these things you can do along with saying no to politicians. Now, Anish, here, you were somebody who actually, is part of actually real big head of state meetings. You see actually what decisions are taken at the global level. Now, I wanted to talk about both that experience as well as the political interference issue that you have in the IFS.
It's been an incredible journey so far, mostly exhilarating, but at times difficult. And you've asked, it's a googly, I see a big googly in the question, googly or Chinaman, whichever. So, yes, from a very junior, from the level of an undersecretary or a second secretary, from a very junior level, you are part of all these big meetings. So your role is small, but your role is important. So that is how you learn also. So when you see big incoming and outgoing visits, so let's say the US president is visiting India. So the junior officers are very, very involved in the visit. One, from protocol wise, I don't want to go into the details, but content, substantive issues. So you are the one who are always drafting MOUs, drafting press statements, making speeches and talking points for all the dignitaries at the political and official level. Then when the meeting actually happened, you will be there at the airport receiving them. At times you ask for a selfie as well. But you are there as a note taker, you keep the record. So you are almost like the most important unit in either in the Ministry of External Affairs or in the embassy, who has to keep a tab of everything. But once there is a career progression and you have independent charge, like in Palestine, that was my recent diplomatic experience, where I was the head of the office there, the Indian representative. It is neither an embassy nor a consulate because of the political situation there. So I was the senior most Indian representative in Palestine. So I was meeting the president and the cabinet ministers. So I had that kind of interaction. But in other places, like right now I'm in Durban, which is a provincial city, commercial hub of the province of KwaZulu-Natal. My interaction is mostly with the provincial government, which is like our state government and the city mayor and all the political and business elites of this province. So that goes from country to country, but whenever you are interacting and you're working, you're representing 1.3 billion Indians. So that's something which you should always keep that in your mind when whatever you say. Even when you pass off certain remarks, you won't easily get away, because people would say, "Oh, this has been stated by an Indian diplomat." And these days with cameras and where you're going to be in trouble and you're going to be absolutely roasted in social media and all those things. So you have to be very, very careful. But all the interesting stories, I think most of them I'll keep them for my memoirs, and some possibly I'll take to my grave. And regarding the political part of it, yes, like Anup said, I had trouble, but I don't know whether it's remembering one of the Malayalam classes. The first someone told us about this lovely saying, "Paapi Chellindaram Padalam." So it's not that I am going after trouble or trouble is going after me. I haven't figured that one out. Yes, but started right from Arab Spring in Egypt, in Libya, then Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, obviously those things, then Palestine, and now Durban. But one of my most memorable moments would be facilitating the historic visit, the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Palestine. And that's something which I really enjoyed doing that, taking care of all the complex logistical issues, and the content and the visit really went off well. So that is definitely the most important moment. Regarding political intervention, nothing. That's something which I've never experienced that. In fact, I never had. In fact, at the early part of my career, I had more interventions from some of the bad apples among the bureaucrats, but never a political leader. And Prasanth really, described that relation between political leadership and civil servants in the most, beautiful manner, because that is the reality we all have to work with. We have to choose your battles. And I think after many years, you really also learn how to work in the system. And second, another question which was not, which I wanted to answer, is regarding foreign service. So compared to all other services, particularly the All India services, foreign service, there is no power. Yes, you can wield some power when you're working in passport offices, probably. But you are always working with foreign governments. So you know that whenever there is trouble, My task is to ensure that the Indian community, wherever I'm posted, I have to take care of their welfare, security, and safety. But I'm always working with foreign government, police is foreign, armies. I mean, I don't have. I mean, like they're not going to take my orders. And I'm also one among the many diplomatic missions here. So they're getting calls from all diplomatic missions. So I have to use my, I would say, my charm, goodwill, pleading, requesting to work. So sometimes the responsibility in certain things is lesser than my colleagues in other services, but then the resources is also often not there because we have to deliver, but we have to deliver working. So therefore, you should be continuously working towards building relations with a network of, elites in the leadership, and important political families and things like that. And you can't really wait for a problem to start and then start building all these relations. So it's a continuous process. So if my predecessor has not done his or her job, or I'm doing a shabby job, probably the problem is going to be faced by my successor or our successor. So it's a long continuous process. But that's all I would like to answer on these 2-3 questions. Hopefully I've answered satisfactorily.
Now, I'd like to pose one last question to the panel at large. Like, having spent a decade and a half in the services, what would your advice be to the aspiring Loyalites? Like, has your experience in this school enriched or like made it easier for you to crack this examination and like become civil servants?
And because this is the last question, I would like to supplement Hafiz when he says that. I want each of you to talk about what really was the qualities that you picked up in Loyola that actually make you a better civil servant. So I think that is very, very important to discuss. So if you could start off with Chabri.
If you look at my journey, within the school, I was very introvert and very recluse, I would say. And it's probably after school that I slowly opened up. When I went to the College of Engineering, Trivandrum, then I got involved with many organizations like the University YMCA, which is an organization in Trivandrum. So, but the foundations were laid in school. And if you want to pick up one thing that I picked in school was the team spirit, that the ability to work in a team. That somehow, that bonding and the team spirit was somehow given to me by Loyola. That I always remember. So, that foundation, not only in terms of personal qualities, personal values, that foundation in terms of academic orientation, all those things helped me. So, taking it a little further, like in engineering, I took up engineering not on my wishes. I was slightly forced to take up engineering, but my interests were very clear on other subjects than engineering. And then I focused on to those subjects. So if I come back to the question, that foundations were laid properly in school.
Okay, Prasanth.
Yeah, I think I'll echo what he said, because I was also kind of a recluse while I was in school. I don't claim that I opened up or changed drastically, but at least the perception that I am an outgoing or a very extrovert person is there right now, which is not true. But I think as a Loyalite, you have a lot of confidence, I guess, because in school we were never spoon fed, so that makes a huge difference. You have to find out for your own. You have to. There's no ready-made notes being given out. I remember Father Pulikal, making us even take lecture notes while we were in the 5th or the 6th. When lecture notes were something which were taken only in the colleges, but we were trained to do all that as young as we were in the 5th or 6th. And also, I think the ability to stand up, and if you believe in something, you had the freedom to say. You had the freedom in Loyola, your opinion that mattered. Even though we never exercised it too much in Loyola, I think once you're outside Loyola, we all did exercise that. I think that really helps. And if trying to find out what the real fact is, getting into the nitty-gritty, finding out, you're doing a bit of research. These are things which basic quality of a loyalite is defined. And maybe something which I should say is, whenever you meet a loyalite, you are immediately able to make out that he is a loyalite. I think most of us, while preparing for the civil services, we did bump into each other at some point of time. Of course, the classmates, we know each other, but the juniors, including Shabri, I think when we just meet up, we know that, okay, well, this chap is a loyalite. And you just ask, okay, are you from Loyola, just to confirm it. Which means there is something that's intangible also that carries with us into the service, and that does make a lot of difference.
Yeah, I think you made a wonderful point about freedom of expression and how we learn to express ourselves without fear or favor. I mean, that is, I think, the most important quality that a bureaucrat has. Anish, what would be your last take?
Yes, I guess Loyola gave me a very good base or foundation, which even when I was shaking throughout, since the foundation was strong, I mean, I could always just hold fort. Then all these bunch of guys I mentioned who are former classmates and schoolmates, I mentioned a lot of names. I would have mentioned many more names. They are still, most of them, my best friends. And like Prasanth, I haven't studied with Prasanth after class 7, I think. But we met after a long time and while during preparation. And so it just, I got the feeling that we were studying throughout. There was no this massive gap of meeting after long years. So that is a great memory. I think that bunch of friends who really helped, and quizzing also, because Loyola had a very good quizzing culture, and I would thank LOBA for their annual quiz competition and all the, in the house and all those things, which has helped me a lot, because throughout I struggled with my studies in school and college. But always that kept me sane was quizzing and cricket, and both Loyola had a lot to do, because we has an amazing bunch of cricket tragics and ardent cricket fans who were more worried rather than all those weekly exams and even for the school exams. We would be more worried if you could just when we had 2 exams per day. I could still remember we would love to squeeze in one cricket match before that with our boards and things like that. So those things have really helped me all throughout my struggle. Even now, that's a big strength. And of course, the English, the good English, schools should take the credit, and the bad English I take the blame. And definitely to all Loyolites, I think Loyolites at that age, all the questions I see in the chat are questions which I would pose. That is also because of all this uncertainty and things like that. And we all have different stories. Not all of us come from very easy background. So I would always say, study as much as you can, identify your strengths, but it's most important to identify your weaknesses. And when it comes to UPSC, you got all the time in the world. So don't think too much about UPSC right now. Just think about being well-rounded, good human beings, great personalities. And by that time, just focus on this thing. Again, I was a drifter, a rolling stone. I would want to be a movie director in 1 month, and then go to cricket journalist, to umpire, then UPSC again. So it took me a lot of years to really, I ran sort of all the options. So finally came back to UPSC. And then again, I was absolutely confused with IAS, IPS, IFS. I wanted all 3. So I'm just telling all this because a lot of students would be like me. You would not know what to do, which subject to take, which question to attempt. And that is a choice you will face throughout your life. And frankly, I wanted a job at home because my father was terribly ill. So I thought IPS, I thought, okay, IPS, maybe there was better chances of getting a Kerala Kada thing. So I gave first 2 attempts with IPS. Then figured out that I would be unfit because I picked up an injury in class 12 in school before the Onam holidays. So that injury helped me in making my choice for foreign service, because I knew I didn't have a training part, which Anup also gave me a lot of advice in choosing the service, and Prasanth as well. He had already got into audit and account service. So Be in good company, be true to yourself, and at the end of the day, you have to find out at some point what is your true calling. You have always time to catch up, but just don't leave it too late. That's it.
If I may add one point, like I just have to mention, because Anish was mentioning the friendship factor. I think apart from all the intangible stuff which we carry forward from the school, this friendship is something that has helped us a lot in preparation. Actually, I remember the first time when I failed. Actually, I didn't make it. That night, the result came around 7 p.m. or so, and I was so depressed and suppressed that I don't know what to do. And then I get a phone call from Varghese, our classmate, our friend, common friend. So Varghese, he called up from the US, and we chatted, we talked and laughed for almost 2 hours. And then from the next day, it was just plain preparation, and the next day it was the next prelims. And I think, if it had not been for him, I wouldn't have cleared that prelims. And after I got into the audit and account service again, I remember I was so fed up with this preparation that I was so happy. I said, "Oh, this is it. I'm not going to write again." And I think it was Anish and Anup who actually pushed me to write the exam again. That's why I got into the IAS. So I think this camaraderie, this friendship that has been with us from the school, it has helped us immensely.
Thank you for all those wonderful answers. There are many more googlies and questions that are waiting, but we don't have time to take them. Please do send in any questions that you have to exploroloba@gmail.com, and we promise to get back to you. There are also 2 polls that have been running earlier. It has been running for the last 5 minutes. So, I presume that most of you have given the answers to it. But if not, please do give your responses to this poll so that we get a fair idea of how we fared. So when we started working on this session, the first response was, "Oh, this is also an exam." So this is the answer to what our exam is. So we'd really like to know how we fared. So please do give in your responses. So this brings us to the end of the career guidance session. To each of you who made time to attend, thank you for your time and your questions. We hope our responses were fruitful. We really enjoyed doing this session as much as we enjoyed having you and interacting with you. On an extremely personal note, this has been a wonderful experience for all of us, sitting together, cracking old jokes, talking about old times. So this has been a really, really wonderful time. Thank you, LOBA, especially Suresh Arvind, Ranjan Kanti, for making this happen and giving us this opportunity. I'm also extremely grateful to my co-moderator, Hafiz, who, as you can see, is really a bright young spark. So I'm sure we'll see a lot more of him in future. A big shout out to the tech team who basically never comes in front, but who has been doing all this work, Binoy and his gang who've been doing this entire work, who are the unsung heroes of every single session. And finally, Reverend Father Principal and the team at Loyola, but for whom this career guidance session would not really have happened. So the next session of LOBA Explore will be on September 4th to take up careers in entrepreneurship. Thank you, all of you, for joining in the session. A very good night to you, to all of you. We look forward to meeting again. Thank you.